Welcome to the Relief from Grief podcast, hosted by Mrs. Miriam Ribiat and brought to you by Miriam. Miriam is an organization dedicated to supporting families who have experienced the loss of a child. It was founded Le'ilui Nishmas Nechama Liba and Miriam Holman. Despite her illness, Miriam devoted herself to addressing the needs of parents and siblings grappling with the immense pain of losing a child. She felt this loss deeply, having experienced it firsthand when her older sister, Nechama Liba, passed away. Miriam continues to uplift and expand on the work Miriam began, a mission carried forward by her parents with great dedication. If you have any questions or comments for the speaker, or if you'd like to suggest a guest for the podcast, please email us at relieffromgrief@miriam.org.
Thank you so much for joining me here on the Relief from Grief by Miriam podcast. Today, Mrs. Adina Kaplan is our guest, and I'm very excited to hear from her. She was a very good friend of Miriam Holman, and Miriam eventually was named after her. And today, Adina runs the Israeli branch of it. So thank you so much for coming on, Adina. I really appreciate it.
Having me. Thank you.
I guess we could start off with the basics, like how you know Miriam and what your relationship was like.
So Miriam and I grew up together. I think my mother, when we were like 2 years old, used to babysit both of us, like along with a group, and we did not get along as kids, as very little kids. And Baruch Hashem, as we got older, we, found a very, very special, unique friendship in each other. So we've been friends since before I can remember, throughout school, elementary school, high school, and beyond. My family's very close with the Holman family also. So, we're bonded in a lot of ways, but yeah, that's how I know Miriam. I know her as long as I know myself.
Wow. So you really go way, way back.
Yeah.
So how old were you when Miriam got sick?
So when we were 18, I was 18, she was 19, but it was the seminary year, and Miriam went to Eretz Israel for seminary and I didn't. I was in America, and she got sick around Sukkot time. So it was like October, November. She came back in November, December, and then spent, the rest of the year. She joined a seminary in 5 towns and she got a job, and she was totally, fully functioning as anyone. Like, people didn't even realize that she wasn't well because she just came back and integrated into life in America beautifully. So we were able to be back together again, even though she was anticipating spending the year in Israel. And yeah, so she was 19 when she got sick in seminary.
So was this scary for you and for her, I guess, because her older sister, Nechama Liba, also had been sick and was nifter?
Very much so. Very, very much so. I think for anyone who knew the Holmans and who knew Miriam, it felt like a big punch in the stomach when she got sick. But once the initial shock wore off, people didn't really know that she was sick. People totally forgot she didn't look sick and she didn't act sick. Now, privately in our friendship, I know for her it was really, really difficult. It was really, really difficult not to compare herself to her sister, not to, just in terms of not being well. And to, I remember having a conversation with her once where I was telling her, Miriam, you're nothing like Nechama in this way. You have a different diagnosis, you have a different prognosis, everything's different. You can't look at her outcome, which was obviously so tragic, but you can't look at that and kind of write yourself off, give yourself a death sentence because of that. And she totally excelled at not doing that. And I know that it was scary for her. It wasn't something that we spoke about on the regular, but it was definitely scary for her. And it was definitely challenging for her, very challenging. That we spoke about more than the scary part of it. But yeah, because she had, experienced the loss of her older sister, there was for sure that element there that made it extra hard, extra scary for everyone. And obviously for her as well. But it was a very different story. Her sister was much younger when she passed away. And there were so many things that were so different about the story that I really, when it came up in conversation with Miriam, I really tried to remind her, don't use Nechama as baseline for what things are going to look like, because you have a totally different life, totally different DNA makeup, like it's not going to be the same.
I saw a picture of her. Her father sent me a picture, Miriam and her father together, just like a beautiful picture. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's so cute and she's so pretty and just so much like so full of life. And I think about that picture a lot. I'm like, it makes no sense. It just makes no sense.
Yeah. You know what? A lot of people, and if you're talking about a picture that I'm thinking of, she probably was actually quite ill at that point already. You know, I remember someone reached out to me like a little bit after Miriam, maybe like a year or two after seminary, and she said, she's like, by the way, like, what happened with Miriam? Like, I heard a rumor she was sick, but then like, what happened? And I just like played it off and whatever. But for me, that was like such a reminder that like people didn't know what was going on. I remember sitting in the car with Miriam once, and she was telling me, obviously there was a lot of unknown in her condition and her prognosis and her future. And we were talking once about shidduchim. We were probably, 19, 20. And she was saying how it's really hard for her sometimes that people are just super, super insensitive. Like they don't realize that she has, very special circumstances that obviously doesn't mean that she can't get married, but it's her like roadmap wasn't looking the same as her friends. And I told her, I like almost blamed her. I was like, you're the most functional, normal person I know. Like if you looked sick, people would be much more sensitive. And she said that to me. She's like, I almost wish that I had an illness that people could see and that would be a reminder. And then they would know, don't talk about certain things in front of me. Like it's a very sensitive thing, but she didn't. And that was like, obviously came with its challenges. The fact that it was more of a silent illness. On the other hand, she almost brought it on herself by just being so normal and so herself and so like you wouldn't know that anything changed from who she was, where she was, that people, even some of our good friends, like I think just forgot. Had they realized what was going on, they obviously would have been a lot more sensitive, but like there was no reason to think she was different than any of us. So the same way you'd fetch about shidduchim to a totally healthy friend, you're fetching about it to her because in your head she's totally healthy. And that's just like one conversation that really stood out to me because it just made me realize that like she's doing a really good job living her life. People don't realize. Like I give her so much credit for that. And it's not just like she came back, she went to seminary, she went to college, she wanted to be a sonographer, like to do like ultrasounds and stuff. And so she was in college, she was working 2 jobs. Like she was doing a lot more than the average person with a lot less energy and a lot, with her situation looking a lot different than most people's. And when it came to going to a simcha, nowhere was too far. She'd have no problem getting in the car and driving to Muncie, from Far Rockaway as if it was around the corner. She was the first one at the simcha to be there, the last one to leave, and dancing the entire time. So it's like she totally lived her life after she got sick the way she lived it before she got sick, which was just being an all around amazing, amazing person, friend, daughter, sister. Like she just was the kind of person who you could always, always rely on. Anytime you needed something, she was the one who you didn't even have to ask. Like she would offer. She was so thoughtful and so like anticipating other people's needs and especially with her family. And she was so generous. And I remember like, being out with her, we were much younger and we probably had $10 to our names, and we were like shopping on Central Avenue and like she wanted to buy gifts for her siblings. I'm like, I'm not spending my last $10 on that, but she was. Like she went so out of her way also to make like Yontif special for her siblings. She would buy like cute props and cute little tchotchkes to put on the Seder table, to make a whole big deal out of Kriyas Yam Suf and all that kind of stuff. And she like really, that's the way she lived the first 19 years of her life. And that's the way she lived the next 3 years of her life. Like it almost didn't matter. Like, she did a really, really good job of continuing life. And I didn't know at the time what her prognosis was. And I don't know if she knew, and I don't know if there was a prognosis, but she was living her life as if she'd live forever. Which, just college, it's a few-year commitment, jobs, like everything that she did, she poured herself 100% into. And I don't know whether or not she knew that she was, kind of living on borrowed time or not. I certainly didn't to that extent. And we never spoke about that. But from the way she lived, you would think she was planning the next 100 years of her life. And maybe she was, because she really, really believed that she would get through it. So now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, no, she actually might have been planning the next 100 years of her life, fully believing that, that's just the type of person she was.
Wow. Wow. So as a 20-year-old, 21-year-old girl, I guess, how did you handle the death of a friend? It's not something that most 21-year-olds have to contend with.
I like looking back now, 7 years later, I'm like, I don't know how that happened. Like what? Like when Miriam was in the hospital, so she went in on Rosh Hashanah, Matzei Rosh Hashanah, I'm sorry. And she was Niftaris the day before Tu B'Shvat. So she was there for a handful of months. And in those months, I happened to have been working in the city, not far from the hospital where she was. And I would go over all the time not before work, but after work. And then I would sleep at the Chesed apartment that was a few blocks down and then go to work straight the next day. Like this Chesed apartment became my second home. And I wanted to spend as much time there as I could. And I was able to because I was single and because I was local and I didn't really have many commitments. So it was like a very, very special time that we were able to spend together. But for those few months, however long it was, like my day, whether or not I realized it, revolved around Miriam, how she was doing. The first text I sent in the morning was to her parents, how was Miriam's night? The last text I sent to her, before I went to sleep was, how was her day? Originally it was that I was talking to Miriam herself, but once things went a little bit more downhill, I was in touch more with her parents and my day just revolved around it. And it was like, it was, I obviously wish the circumstances were different, but it was really, really a zchus to be able to spend that time with her and to have that special time with her and to just to see her, the way she interacted with everyone and the way she conducted herself, regardless of what she was going through. So I don't know, like the thought of now, I was 20 at the time, and the thought of a 20-year-old going through that seems so like incredulous. Like, how is that even possible? And I honestly, I don't know. And I actually remember when Miriam was first hospitalized, I got a text from a very respected and valued person who deals a lot with grief and someone who's, after Miriam died, helped me personally. But she texted me, oh, I heard, Miriam's in the hospital, just letting you know I'm here for you, which was really, really nice. She knew I was a close friend. But as soon as I saw that, I was like, in my head, I was like, I think she's dying. Because, if like the grief person is reaching out to you to like say, how can I help you? It's like, wow, this must be really bad. And I was just crying and crying. And I like in my head, I was already like at her levaya because why else would she be reaching out to me? I'm like, it must be worse than I thought it was. But then after that, we were like really able to, once I got over that and I was able to move past that like really intense fear, it was really just like, it was just what you did. It's what you do. Like, it wasn't even like people, like, I am not a humble person. I'm just not. Like, if I do something that deserves credit, I have no problem taking credit for it. This wasn't something that to me like deserved credit. Like, I know that if God forbid the roles were reversed, she would have done the same for me times 1,000. Like it wasn't even a question. Like, you're there for your friends, for your best friends, for your sisters. Like, you're there for the people who you love the most. So it's not like it's not a question of like, can I make it work? It's like, what do you mean? Like, this is her life right now, so this is my life right now. And it was my life for a while. And I put dating on hold for a while because I didn't have the head for it. And I put a lot of things on hold, and I wouldn't have done it any other way, because this is what you do for the people that you love. And again, like the fact that I was single and able to have that time with her is something that I really, really thank Hashem for, and I really treasure, because, we have other friends that might have been really close with her in high school, but then they got married right away. So they kind of, lost touch a little bit. And then when Miriam was in the hospital for those, I don't know, 4 months, they were able to come like once, twice, maybe 3 times, but there's only so much they could do, especially if they had kids. And I really felt like Hashem put me in this opportunity where like I could do for her what she would have done for me, a fraction of it at least.
It's very special, because what I'm hearing is like, you yourself have a very strong, positive attribute of being a good friend. But what you're saying is that like part of what made you such a good friend is because of Miriam's like midos and the way she was, that that she would have been like that in a second.
She would have done what I did, but so much more, and anticipated every single need before I even knew that I needed it. Like, it's just, I don't know, the same way like you would do anything for your mother, for your father, for your sibling, for your kid. Like, it's not a question, it's not a favor, it's what you do because you want to do it, and that's exactly what it is. So I don't know, like, it's a crazy thing for a 20-year-old to go through. And recently when I heard about someone around that age passing away and I was thinking about our friends, I'm like, gosh, I don't know how they're going through that. Then I'm like, you went through that. But I mean, first of all, it's different when it's you. And also, like, Baruch Hashem, I had such a good support system of my family, the Holmans, our friends, like, my mentors, like, everyone was in it. The entire community was in it. Everyone was davening so hard, and everyone was so invested that it wasn't like, it was like, it was a huge hug from everyone. I didn't feel like I was doing it alone. I felt like I had the support system that I needed, and after she passed away, our friends group got even closer, and we really took care of each other, and we still do. And it's 7 years later, we miss her like crazy. And when something happens that reminds us of her,
with your group of friends.
Yeah. So we were getting together every year on her yard site. It got a little bit harder when some of us moved to Eretz Yisrael, but totally on our yard site, especially from like our tight knit friend group, someone will usually send a message, or if someone was in Eretz Yisrael and visited Miriam's kever, they'll message us. Like, very much part of our lives, very much part of my life. Whatever. Like I said, it helped that there were a lot of people who loved her and cared about her.
What happened by your wedding? That must have been hard for you to be engaged and get married without her.
It was really hard. I remember like telling my husband, I'm like, I can't believe that like you never met her. Like, she's such a big part of my life. She was back then. I got married like a year and a half after she passed away, and 7 years later, she still is a huge part of my life. And it was really hard. It was really, really painful. And I had this bracelet, when I don't know when it was, but at some point, like in between, after she got sick in seminary, I was in Israel and I went to the Hodaya store and I bought her a bracelet that said, probably gonna botch it up, but it said, basically, it was like a play on words, but in English it said, like, when the waters get tough, that's when the strong people are revealed. Mayim, Miskalim, Hamiskalim, something, I don't know. And I gave it to her, and after she passed away, her parents gave me the bracelet back, and wow. I wore it to my wedding, and it was like, I felt like she was there. And, just throughout the wedding, like, she came up in my mind multiple times. And my husband has since, we're married 5.5 years now. And my husband has said many times, like, I feel like I know her. I totally feel like I know her. And when it's around her yard site and, or something comes up or whatever it is, like, he's really, really supportive. And he feels like he never met her, but that's about it. Like, everything else was done. And I know that, like, they would have hit it off. They would have, but that it was a really, really painful thing that someone who was such a big part of my life is not going to meet someone who was also such a big part of my life.
Right.
But, at the same time, the fact that I was able to spend all that time with her in the hospital because I wasn't married, I would take that over being married earlier so that my husband could know her. You know what I'm saying?
I have a sister that was niftar, and she also, her friends, like, she had one friend also that, like, quit her job so that she could be there for my sister, like, really, really dedicated, very amazing. And, like, I guess when I'm listening to you talk, I'm like, okay, my sister was an exceptional person. I guess Miriam also was, and I guess she also just has exceptional friends. And it's amazing that you keep her alive, because it's the biggest nechama for you, for the family, for everyone. I think it's just so, like, amazing.
I think also, like, part of, and I don't know if you're in touch with your sister's friends but part of what also keeps her alive is, like, that I feel very, very fortunate to have a very close relationship with the Holmans. And when I talk to Mrs. Holman, which I do quite often, I feel like I'm talking to Miriam. And when she talks to me, she feels like we're back on her couch in high school, schmoozing on the couch, me, Miriam, and, like, her mom is sitting there. So we're all schmoozing, like,
right.
And I feel so blessed to have that relationship and to have that connection, because it's huge. Like, it keeps me so connected to Miriam herself, besides the fact that I love her family independently. Just that really makes a difference.
Yeah, it does make a difference. That really is very, very special. So let's talk about Miriam. I know that, like we said, her older sister was Nifter Nechama, and the Holmans a little bit started some sort of Shabbaton, but Miriam, I know, is the one that really wanted to make it into a big thing. So I guess if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So the Holmans started, I don't know, maybe 18 years ago. When after Nechama passed away, Miriam was like 8 years old. And they went to a retreat, a bereavement retreat, and they really they felt like it was really, really beneficial, but it bothered them that it wasn't for kids also, because they had, I guess three other kids at the time, ranging, from ages, I guess, 9 to little kids. But they saw that there needs to be support for the kids themselves. So the Holmans started maybe 18 years ago, I'm not sure, a retreat every year in Camp Simcha where families would come together, and they had a beautiful retreat. It was for parents and kids. It was for families that lost a child. Sorry, I should clarify. But the entire family was invited. It wasn't just for the parents. It was very, very much recognized that child loss affects every person in the family. So there were things for siblings, things for parents, and everything. As we got older, Miriam became more and more instrumental in running these Shabbatons. So that didn't have an official name. It was the Holman retreat, the bereavement retreat. And when we were in high school, Miriam basically took over the Shabbatons, running them with her father. And, when we were in 12th grade, 11th grade, a bunch of friends went upstate for the Shabbaton to babysit. Miriam got her friends into it. I didn't go that year. I went later on. But it was something that Miriam was very, very passionate about. And she had started, especially as she got older, she became kind of like a...
Miriam was right under her sister Nechama, right?
No, there's a boy in between.
So there was Nechama. So how old was Miriam when her sister was Nifter?
So Nechama was a few days away from her 11th birthday. Miriam was, I guess, 8 or 9. So got to put the brothers somewhere in between.
Okay, but totally old enough to remember her. And
yeah, very much so. Very, very much so. Miriam was also she kept her entire life a very, very strong connection with Nechama. And I don't even know the half of it, but I do know that every year on her yard site, she would get people to finish Sefer Tehillim. It meant a lot to her. She felt the loss of her sister, and she felt her sister with her. There were pictures in her room of Nechama and Miriam together. So Miriam ended up really taking over, and she became kind of a lifeline for girls, teenagers that lost a sibling. And a few times she made some sort of support group, unofficial. And, she was in Brooklyn, so she met up with a bunch of girls. They went out to eat for dinner, and she was just the unofficial leader of the group. And so it slowly became not just the Shabbaton, but very, very minimally. Miriam was doing, some things on the side. But then Miriam and her father had plans to make it into a real year-round program. And they met with someone from an organization, and they really had stuff in the works and ideas to make it happen. This was in the summer. And then Miriam was hospitalized Matzei Rosh Hashanah. So it was very shortly before they had a chance to actually implement anything. And Miriam from the hospital was still working on it. She wanted to, they had to tell her Miriam, now's not the time, put it down, but this was something that she was so passionate about. So after she passed away, it was a no-brainer what her family was going to do, Le'iloi Nishmasa. So they took their annual retreat that they had been doing for over probably 11 years. And they turned it into a year-round program, including the retreat, but also year-round. And they called it Miriam, which means to lift people up. And it's a play on, words, the same letters as Miriam. And they started this incredible, incredible program in America, in 5 towns in Brooklyn and Lakewood and Muncie, supporting families year-round with different events and different support groups. And of course, the main highlight is the annual retreat. So the last year that Miriam did the retreat, I actually went on it with Miriam and with another friend. We just went to help out. And it was really amazing to see Miriam in action and to see the way she connected to everyone and the way she helped people and the way that she was so geschickt and so just made everything happen. This was really her baby. And so when her family started Miriam, I got involved in Miriam in America in whatever way I could. And the first retreat that they did after Miriam passed away, I was married. My husband and I went to help out. And it's something that I was very, very, like emotionally dedicated to. Then I moved to Israel about 3.5 years ago. And 3 years ago, by Miriam's yard site, I was talking to a really close friend, Tara Block, who was also a really close friend of Miriam's throughout high school and beyond. And I was saying, you know, like Miriam's yard site's coming up, like what can we do? And she said, she's like, this is going to sound crazy, but what if we made like an event for bereaved people? I don't know who yet, but like someone kind of do like a Miriam event here, a one-time thing. I was like, okay, one-time thing we could do. So we decided that like doing an event for bereaved moms was like really scary. We were like, you know, 22 years old and didn't feel like we had what it took. So we said we're going to do for bereaved siblings. Plus, like that was Miriam's, like she was a bereaved sibling. So we put together some plans and we spread the word and made a flyer, and we made a paint night for girls and women that lost a sibling, a brother or a sister. And we did it in Ramat Eshkol, and we had between like 20, 25 girls came, and we served like, you know, a nice spread, and the feedback was absolutely like, it was insane. People were like so blown away. They, you know, there were girls in seminary that came, so they don't necessarily have a community here. They're not near family. There were young Americans who came who are not near family, you know, so that's really difficult. And then there were also like American Israelis who came who like don't exactly necessarily fit into the Israeli system, but they still need that support. And we didn't even realize that like there was really such a need. So we, when we were advertising for that first event, someone reached out to me and said, hi, do you also do events for moms? And I'm like, we don't like do events. We're doing one event, you know? But I said, I'm like, if you want, and you know, there are people, we can make it happen. And she was really into it. So we decided, you know what, the event for siblings was such a hit. Let's do this for moms. And
what were the Holman's response to this? They must have been like so happy.
They were so into it, so happy. I mean, we couldn't have done it without them. First of all, because it's their organization. Also because they fund the whole thing. They were like, you know, when the first event went really well and we told them like we want to do one for moms, they were really into it, obviously. But we didn't know how it was going to go. And, you know, by the first moms event, we showed like a slideshow of Miriam, you know, and I spoke a little bit just to introduce people to the concept. And again, the feedback was overwhelming. Like, again, we didn't know that it was such a void. We just decided like, let's do something, you know, because her yard site's coming up, let's do a one-time event and see what happens. And then what happened is that, you know, we've had 3 years now of running events throughout the year we do different types of events. So we do events for girls and women that lost a sibling. That's usually like teenage, seminary age and above. And then we do events for moms that lost a child. And then when Mr. Holman is in town, which is fairly often, we try when we can to make an event for couples, because obviously the fathers also need a lot of support, but that's not something that I can coordinate. You know, by the moms and the siblings events, like Atara and I were there, we're facilitating it, and we can't do that for the fathers. So a bunch of times when Mr. Holman's come, we've done like a couples event, and it's been phenomenal. It's been phenomenal. And now we have people asking us if we can do events for younger children, if we can make events kind of like segment them by like what kind of loss or how old the child was, you know, and we're always open to new ideas. But at this point, we have a database of probably over 70 women who lost children, all English speaking. And it's such a schus for Atara and I to be able to do it. Instantly, the impact that you're making on people's lives and how much you're helping them. And so many people have expressed to us how special it is just to come out for a night and feel pampered. And there are some people who want to come out and they want to talk. There's some people who want to come out and they don't want to talk, and they don't talk. I mean, they talk, but not about their loss.
Right.
But they all like unanimously express the same sentiment that just being in the same room with people who they know have gone through, you know, that loss. The siblings say this, the mothers say this, the father, everyone says this, is so powerful in and of itself. And we're not there to be a support group. And, you know, obviously there are friendships that have been made through these events that are amazing, that they've really become, you know, like each other's anchor. But most of our events are good food, a fun activity, or like a cathartic activity. So it'll be like, we do a lot of art stuff. We'll do a food competition, whatever it is. You know, at Sarsi Made Tshuva, we had a speaker. So that was like a little bit more intense. But even that, the feedback was just amazing. People just love coming out and having the space, if they want to talk, and if they don't want to, not to talk, but to know that they're with people who have been through what they've been through in their own way.
This week didn't you have an event this week for those that lost their children were soldiers, our soldiers?
No, we didn't have that. We did. I mean, obviously, unfortunately, there's a lot more bereaved families now in Israel in the past year plus. And I actually spoke with a few soldiers' moms who, when I told them about Mayrim, they were like really, really into it. And they were like, this sounds amazing. This sounds like something I can really benefit from. I spoke with them more recently. And then the event that came up, the Hanukkah event, just timing wise, it didn't work out for a few people. But I can see in the future attracting, and if the group is big enough, then we would do an event exclusively for mothers who lost soldiers or mothers who lost babies. And that's what one of the people at our last event came up to us and said, she loves the events and they do so much for her. And she asked, would you be interested in making events for people who, let's say, lost little children? Because obviously it's a different experience losing a baby than losing an adult child. And she, and we told her that that's something that we're totally open to. And we have people that come from not just Yerushalayim. I mean, our events are in Yerushalayim because that's where Atara and I are, and that's most central. But we have people who are coming from Moshavim. We have people who came from Bnei Brak. We had a couple who came from Tzvat for one of, our first couples event. And they made a vacation out of it. They made their getaway, but it was around this. And it's, we've learned that there's really, really a need for Americans in Israel and American Israelis to have that kind of support. And, just the Israeli culture is different than the American one. So the grief culture is going to look different as well, obviously. And for people to be able to come together with people who speak their language, literally and figuratively, is just proven to be really, really priceless.
So you must be pretty amazing. How do you, a young girl, if I could call you that, because you're pretty young.
Call me whatever you want.
Not Israeli, and yet, all these bereaved siblings and parents, mothers, they feel comfortable with you. So how do you do that?
So I want to just preface by saying it's not just me. It's me and Atara. Atara is absolutely amazing. She's not the one on the call, so which is why I can say this. She's incredible. She happens to be a social worker herself with a lot of experience in grief. So she's if something comes up, she's always Atara, get involved, But the women are so, so appreciative. Like I said, when Atara first had the idea, let's make an event, we were like, oh, we can't go near bereaved moms. That's terrifying. They don't want these little 22-year-old pishers. Yeah, they do. They do, because people will take support from wherever they can get it. And it's been such a big lesson for me like that. And I've become close with a lot of the moms. And when I see them at the events, we hug each other and we're so excited. And after I had my baby, they got so excited. I got so many mazel tovs. They felt invested because I'm someone who they appreciate and I appreciate them. And it's just, you become close with people because they end up sharing their experiences. And the fact that, Baruch Hashem, Atara and I have not been in that place, it's not a deterrent. At the events, we set up everything and then we'll usually step aside. We don't want to be in anyone's space. A lot of times the moms will invite us, hey, why don't you come do the project with us? And yeah, I have no problem sitting with them and I'll usually schmooze with them. But at the same time, we're very cognizant of the fact that some people only feel comfortable talking to people who have experienced that kind of loss. And my job is to facilitate that, not to be there. So if that means sitting in the kitchen while everyone's in the dining room, amazing. If there's an issue, they know where to find me, and Atara also, it's not, I think that, and also you meet people and you see that behind every big name and big face and whatever is a person who's suffering a lot and who's really, really grateful to receive support. And there are so many people who have come to events who I had heard their stories from news, from friends, from whatever. And then you meet them and you're like, oh my gosh, that's them. And right. It's yeah, that's them. And they're really suffering. And to be able to be, we have, it's very interesting because the Holmans have a rule on their retreat. They typically don't let families who experience the loss within the year come. And they have their reasons and they're all really good reasons.
They also don't let anyone speak that didn't lose a child.
Correct.
It's amazing what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. So we have events where women lost their children over 20 years ago. And we also we had an event once where the women were going around and they were each saying their name and sharing some information. And one of the women had just passed her daughter Shloshim. And it was it was so shocking because I didn't think that people at that stage would even be, but people are really, really thirsty for that. I had someone reach out to me. I had just landed after being in America for Pesach. I landed in Israel and I got a call from an unknown number, so I answered it. And it was a lady who had just lost her son, I think Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And she said, I heard about this organization. I want to get involved. And I'm like, you sure you want to get involved? She's like, yeah, I really want to get involved. And she's been to every event since. And the feedback that she gives, she's like, you don't understand what you're doing for me. And she came so soon after she lost her son. At the end of the day, like, this is, they become part of this really, really dreadful community that no one can ever fathom being a part of. And to be able to give them that support, it's not, I talk to Mrs. Holman usually after every event, and I'll just tell her how it went. She was like, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm like, you don't have to thank me. Like, this gives me so much sipak hanefesh, and I know Atara feels the same way. And it's like, it's instant gratification. It's like, you see, as you're doing the event, you see the women walk in and go, like, you see it, and you see them leaving feeling different, feeling uplifted, feeling empowered, feeling good, feeling understood. And it's like, it's a no-brainer. And when Atara and I do events, when we're planning the activity, we're always thinking about, like, what would Miriam have done? And after every, Mrs. Holman could tell you, probably after almost every event that we've done, and I spoke to her, I said, like, Miriam was there. Like, she would have done this down to the T, down to this type of sushi, this type of activity, this type of tablecloth. Like, this is exactly what she would have done. And I know she would have. And had she had the opportunity to be able to do this for people, siblings, for moms, for anyone, she did what she was able to. And then she had really big plans that unfortunately couldn't come into fruition. And everything we do, it's like exactly the way that Miriam would have wanted it. And it's really, really special for us as friends to still have that connection with her also in that way.
I think, again, it like attests to her character that she has such wonderful friends and such wonderful family.
That's for sure. That's for sure. For sure.
I know that. I just finished, whatever, it's in the final stages of editing, I hope, but, a book for bereaved parents, right? I did it together with, Glenn Holman. But I spoke to so many people, and there were some people, and especially in Eretz Yisrael, there was a few people in Israel that when I spoke to them, it was like, I felt like, I didn't feel like they were doing me such a big favor by opening up. I felt like I was doing them the favor. I would ask one simple question, whatever, and they would go on and on and on and on. Or if it was through emails, like, you think, who wants to type so much? But these long emails back, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, there's so many people that really need to talk, and like they're just not finding the right people to talk to. So I really get what you're saying, that the mothers, really need it.
It's so true. And listen, I know for myself, I can't speak for Atara, but it can be very emotionally draining, especially Atara and I are both mothers ourselves. And when we do the moms events, there have been so many times where I'll just walk into the next room, just tears streaming down my face. And it's so hard to be in a room with so many people who are in so much pain. And it's not like these are, a lot of them are very happy people. You wouldn't know that they're in so much pain, but because we do know them, and because they're there that night, we know that they're there for a reason. And when I look around at a room of 20 women and I'm like, they've all gone through this, like it hurts so much. But then you think about, like, I can't take away their pain, and we can't change anything about what happened. But if we can be a little bit of light, we had a girl come to one of our siblings events once, and she walked in and she was like, oh my gosh, like, I've never felt like this before. She didn't even know anyone at the event. She just walked in. I think for some of these girls, probably, it's like they know that no one's going to be at the event asking them, how many siblings do you have? And they have to, like, grapple, what number are you in your family? Any of these things that are so normal to come up in day-to-day conversation, but people who have gone through this type of loss, as you know, are so much more sensitive to. So people walk in and they feel like, I have a community, and it's unbelievable, and it's emotionally draining, but it's unbelievable. And it's a schus. It really, really is. It gives me a lot of sipak hanefesh. It keeps me connected to Miriam, to the Holmans, to the bereaved community that I was very, very minimally connected with before Miriam died. I helped her a little bit with the retreat that last year, but that was pretty much it. Also, I will never claim to understand the pain that a bereaved sibling goes through, because I didn't lose a sibling. I lost a best friend. She was like a sister to me. Definitely, so to be able to give to that community that, again, thank God I'm not a part of, but I feel distant cousins with, because they're definitely, I experienced the loss of someone really, really close to me. It's something amazing. And I'm grateful that Atara came up with the idea to even do this, because I never would have. And Baruch Hashem, it's really snowballed into something so much bigger than we could have imagined at the time. And it's something that we intend to keep on continuing, because the need is really, really there. And the feedback,
You
is definitely
started
to
off
that.
with saying that you're not a humble person, but I think that after this past 45 minutes, I have to disagree with you, because if you wouldn't be humble, you wouldn't be able to connect to all these people. The people would feel a certain sense of like, you just don't get me. And yet the fact that you could really understand that you don't understand, and you could be sensitive enough, even though knowing that you really can't know, I think is in a certain sense a simple humbleness. And I think that's why you're so successful.
Right. And we try to just, like I said, do our thing and stay in the background. And, I went to one of the women who like I became close with. It was her son's like second yard site, and they made an event at their house, and I went, and she was so appreciative to see me. And I felt like, what do you mean? Like, I know you, like I'm connected to you in like in such a personal way. Like, of course I'm going to be there. And again, like we know our place, but at the same time, people are much less snobby than you think they are. Most people are not super exclusive. If you're doing something for them, and if they see that you're genuine and that you really care, the fact that you've never been through that loss is almost like secondary. As long as you don't pretend that you have been, and they sometimes the women will like joke about all the like crazy things that people have said to them over Shiva, and sometimes people will come into a Shiva house, just from what I've overheard from these ladies, and like try to like insert themselves, like connect it, like, I know how you feel because I lost. It's like, no, you don't know how I feel. You don't know how I feel. So don't even try. And I think that that's something that is also really important. If you're lucky enough not to be part of the community, but you're giving to that community, you have to recognize that you're there as support and as a service provider. And again, I thank Hashem all the time that I'm not like, especially when I leave events and I'm like, I don't know how people do this. I think it's a lot about like knowing your place, also just showing people that you really care. People need it. People really, really need it. And it's just so painful to see. But knowing that you can do even a little something to alleviate the pain is already like, forget a nechama to them, like it's a nechama to me. It really is almost like a favor to me, which is why when the Holmans are like, thank you so much, thank you, I'm like, this was kind of selfish also. Like, this is just as much for me as it is for anyone else. So this is great, It's a win-win for everyone.
Wow. Okay. Unbelievable. Really. It's amazing. I guess, I don't know. Before we end off, is there anything important, any messages that we should end off with?
I think that, there's two things. There's the being a very close friend of someone who passed away, and then there's the being in the position where, Baruch Hashem, I'm co-running the Miriam branch in Israel. In terms of like losing a close friend, I think that people like don't always recognize just how painful it is. And not even for me, because for me, like I had a coveted place in Miriam's life, and people knew that. And I was there the entire Shiva. I happened to, like you said, your sister's friend quit her job. I happened to have been like, I quit my job and then I was in between jobs. It worked out really well, but I was there the whole time and people recognized me. Whereas other ones of our friends who maybe got married right away or drifted apart a little bit, they were in so much pain, but people didn't realize that they even had that close relationship to Miriam. And I think that like, when people go through loss, even girls that who weren't particularly friends with Miriam in high school, we were a small grade of 30, but we weren't all best friends. Miriam happened to have been exceptionally nice to everyone. But when we would make the yard events, like the most random people would come, because at the end of the day, like everyone is affected. It hits really, really close to home. And when I hear about someone Lolene passing away now, and I think about their friends, like I try to reach out to their friends and say, like, first of all, I'm really sorry. That stinks. And especially if it's a very close friend, like they don't sit Shiva, they don't go through that whole mourning process, and they're not necessarily recognized. So I just feel like, it's a really, really unique and horrible experience to lose a friend, especially a really, really close friend who's more like a sister. And just, I know how much it was appreciated to me when people actually recognized it and reached out to me, even though I wasn't the one sitting Shiva. That's the being a friend part. And then in terms of running Meirim, like there's so much you can do for community, whether you're part of it or not. And when there's a need, people just, when someone steps in, they are forever, forever grateful. And again, like, even if it seems like an intimidating audience and not like people that you normally interact with willingly, because I don't know, I'm 20 years younger and I don't have anything to say, people would be surprised at how appreciated it really is. And like I said, I really, really feel grateful that Atara came up with the idea, and that the Holmans fund Mayrim, and that, we obviously couldn't do it without them. The fact that these women all come to our events free, and there's a sushi bar, and there's salads, and there's soup, and they come, and like I said, they just feel pampered, and without paying a penny. So it's really, really amazing what the Holmans have done with their pain. And I know, like I said, when we do our Mayrim events, it's always like, wow, Miriam would have loved this. And that's how it is with the whole Mayrim. They're doing amazing, amazing things in America, in all different communities, and their Shabbatones and their support groups and their meetups and their Rosh Chodesh for all different ages. And I think it's amazing that Miriam was able to leave behind a legacy that was so clear on what she was passionate about, that it wasn't like, do we do this? Do we do that? It was like, no, Miriam started this. We're going to continue it. And that's exactly what we're doing. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to, go onto the podcast and share. It's very cathartic.
It's really, really amazing. And I really, I so much relate to what you're saying, because even though I lost a brother, I lost a sister, I lost both my parents when they were young. I went through plenty of loss. And then I was married and with, young children and whatever, or not young children. And I lost friends, 2 friends. And when the first one was left her, I was like, 1 second, I don't have a place over here. I never really knew her family. I never really knew her children. So it was just oh my gosh, I'm lost. I don't know how to grieve a friend. How do I grieve a friend? It's so much easier to grieve when you're in it. It might be more painful, but it's also easier. And losing those friends. And you know what? Till today, I just kind of I just shut myself down. I'm like, I can't. I don't know what to do with the pain. So just turn it off.
But that, in a way, I feel like is even harder because my family's so close with the Holmans and I was so close with Miriam, I will forever, forever be connected to them. And for me, that was I felt like I had a place, even though it wasn't that place, I had a place. And that's why I really felt more I had it easier in that way than other ones of my friends who really didn't have a place. Maybe they didn't have they were very close to her, but they didn't have a shechus to her family. So then it's awkward. It's do we stay in touch? Do they want to hear from you, or is it more painful? Miriam had a very close friend in high school who named her daughter after Miriam. I know that was very, very, that was very, very meaningful for the Holmans. But I remember after Miriam died, Mrs. Holman said to me, she's like, I can't imagine what you're going through losing a friend. I'm like, are you insane? What are you saying? What? Because she had gone through this crazy, crazy loss. But like you're saying, when there's no clear place and there's no clear process, it's just very uncharted territory. And the fact that you had those crazy close experiences and then lost 2 friends, it's where do you put yourself? And again, I feel blessed that I knew where to put myself, because I always felt like I had a place in the Holman family, and I still do. And I consider Mrs. Holman a second mother. She considers me another daughter, so I never had that awkward stage of do I keep in touch? Do I send her my VARD invitation? It was yeah, I wanted her to meet my husband before we got engaged. I needed her stamp of approval, so it's a different experience, but it's a very unique experiences. And I kind of regret not keeping more of a steady journal back in that time, where I can look back and be like, wow, how did we go through that? Because now time blunts the edges a little bit and blurs it. But by doing things and by staying connected to the family, I feel like we really keep things alive. And I don't know if your friends were from high school or whatever, but I found that even just getting together with a few friends, and last year, Pesach time, Atara and I and another friend who live in Israel, who was also really close friends with Miriam, went back for Pesach, and we got together with our whole chevra. Basically, it was 10 people. And I was really feeling Miriam's loss there. When we were driving there, listening to music, and we all left our kids at home. It was just we had a ton of fun. And when we got there, I said something felt like it was missing. And I said guys, can we at least maybe when we make brachas, let's just do it Le'iloi Nishmas Miriam. And her loss was really, really felt there. And not just from me, from everyone who was there, even from people who didn't necessarily keep up with her so much. It's not the same, but we all had that experience of losing a friend. So we all have that connection, and we'll always be closer to each other, and we'll be a closer grade because of that than we would have been had we not been bonded by, a really, really tragic loss of one of the most popular, beloved people in the grade.
Well, it's amazing. Thank you so much. Her neshama should continue to have an aliyah. She must be having a lot of aliyahs from everything that everyone is doing. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so, so much. Appreciate it.
You've just listened to an episode of the Relief from Grief podcast with Miriam Riviere, brought to you by Miriam. For more episodes, visit the Miriam website at www.miriam.org. Help us reach more people who might benefit from this podcast. If you know someone who could find it helpful, please share it with them. If you have questions or comments for the speaker, or if you'd like to suggest a guest for the podcast, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at relieffromgrief@miriam.org. We look forward to having you join us in the next episode.